720p thing. Tried to get Zoom to do a higher resolution, but they shut that thing off so that it
Mhm.
doesn't do it anymore. When we see the live, oh yeah, YouTube, we are live. Ooh, I'm Scott Weinberg. This is Elliot Gluck and Savada. How do you say your last name?
Zavod Razarians.
Javata Jarians.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
we'll try it every week. You'll get there.
okay. We're gonna go with Savada.
That works for
Um,
me.
Elliot's, this is Locamor, which is a division of the Eden Cooperation. I'm introducing these ideas now because it's coming back online, what this is really about. And it's really the context of, the best Trojan play horse to move into a better future is to activate people locally with immediate demonstration of impact and benefit, personal and for their communities or whatever groups they're in, is to say, wow, we can actually take the noise out. I can learn more about myself and my friends, my community, my team, and or my collaborators, and then figure out who to work with, play with, do stuff with in my community in a place or online. Eventually, it'll be in WhatsApp and Telegram groups and stuff like that. But for right now, we're just going to focus one neighborhood at a time to help people create a market that's more vibrant and visible and personally relevant for everyone who's got offers, meeting people who have asks or requests or seeking things. And that's almost everyone in our communities has a main gig or a side gig that works locally. If it's paid or not paid, people are doing stuff or want to do stuff in their communities. And right now, the system is really opaque. So the first place that we can gain traction, as I understand it, is to show people we can do this locally. Elliot's helping to develop the app or the chat agent or assistant to help get people to track what their priorities are, what their interests are, what their offer is in a way that becomes digitally relevant, that it helps you have a digital profiles for better matching. And AI can help us do that matching really well and also help reflect what we're describing about ourselves in terms that it can say, is this what you said and how you want to see yourself? And then the AI system, our agent or assistant, can then use that in a cleaned up digital way to do really accurate matching that will make smarter as we go. So I want to find out about, your work previously, Elliot, what you did with Alpha Grove, why you got into it, your backstory from when you were younger. We're going to get into more of like the backstory for the team to understand who you are. Because I say Elliot's my cousin's son, and he's in Israel and he's a really good coder. And that's like, you can look at a CV and like Deborah says, that's not even the whole picture of what we're trying to get out of people. It's your whole person in a way, how it correlates with this, what your other fascinations are, the same as we would do in a room with people, but slowing it down because our core team is the DNA for this thing. So each of us understanding each other is really important. We'll do the same thing with you, Savada, another day. I'm going to bring it. And so Savada's helping and learning about all this stuff. So I'm introducing him now, but we're going to focus on Savada another day. And I'm going to like kick him out of stop video so we don't see him. I think put in waiting room. No, not remove. I think stop video. Let's try that. Yep, there we go. Savada, you can still hear us?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. If you like hang in there, and if at any point, Elliot, you want to pause the video to say something private or what's cool or not, we'll just pause it. That's our ethic here is like consent based. This is off the record. And then we pause the otter or extract stuff from the otter, but we're trying to keep these sections like openly shareable. So
Absolutely.
first is, yeah, a little bit about who you are. And Deborah took it and she said, you know what, I want to talk more about the project and I'll tell you who I am through the project. And then we teased it out. And we can get into some of what we're doing next. That'll be part of what we're going to do today. So it's kind of the agenda. How much time have you got? Are you good for like an hour?
I'm good. Yeah, I've got plenty
Great.
of time.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
I'm Elliot. I'm the lead developer here on Locamor. And a little bit of my background is I've been coding. I've been passionate about technology since I was like 8 or 9 years old. Building websites, coding, building computers. for really as long as I can remember. It's always been a huge fascination and passion of mine. And very early on, it became a professional interest. I would do freelance consulting for website development and software programming um, from as early as like 14, 15 years old. When I was 18 years old, I started working at Microsoft. I was working there for a year and a half while I was attending community college, also during COVID, working from home. And it was during that time, since Microsoft was one of the early backers of OpenAI, that I actually got to experience GPT-2 before ChatGPT was publicly launched and when it was still on a private basis. And from that period, I mean, I could see the technology in front of me, how it was rapidly changing. And I knew that there was going to be massive, massive amounts of transformation happening incredibly quickly. And I was following it ever since ChatGPT launched to the public. I believe it was in December of 2022. Um, and then even carrying on past that with all of the competing products from Anthropic, from Google and Gemini, from X and XAI. And then additionally as well, I built my own AI machine learning machine that's still in the United States right now for processing local models and seeing what's going on with Meta in China and basically just immersing my entire background in technology into the research of artificial intelligence, how it can be used with transformer models to understand language and do natural language processing, or diffusion models to understand how things like audio or photos or videos are able to be pulled from natural language prompts. Fascinating, fascinating stuff that I love to dig my teeth into. What was interesting when I started AlphaGrove was that I was beginning to look at embedding models and how we can represent natural language through math and numbers and being able to represent, say, a word or a series of words, a phrase, in a multidimensional space that's represented through vectors. And then by doing that, we're actually able to find through algorithms like cosine similarity, we're able to find how two different phrases are or aren't similar to one another.
Mhm.
And that got my head thinking about, okay, what sort of technology can be built out of this? What sort of recommendation engines could be built out of this? With AlphaGrove, the first actual initial purpose of that was to look at strictly legal documents. So analyzing court cases, say in the United States, and then matching them and comparing them to each other. And then that flowed naturally as well into then financial documents and then political documents and just trying to understand how we can process this data and then create atomic numerical representations of that data so that they can be compared to one another very quickly and seen, okay, these things are very similar. We don't necessarily know what they are on the surface level just looking at the numbers, but we can tell that there is some sort of similarity between them.
And
And
that
what I
would
found
be in the legal use case for that might be what did you have in mind as like the business? How would that express as like a value proposition for that one? What were you seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're, for example, attorney and you're doing research on a case, uh, in the United States at least, where you have a presidential system, for stare decisis, you want to be able to look at previous precedents set by previous decisions. And so, if you're looking up, um, the type of decision you'd want to find we'll be able to then process that query, get the mathematical representation of what you want, and then be able to go up and look at all of the different cases and be able to find similarities and comparisons. Very similar with Google Scholar, but doing it in a slightly different way because the technology is very new and much more open. Um, and so, in doing so, you're basically able to take all this noise of all of these documents, decades, sometimes even centuries of legal opinions, and distill it to exactly what you need and what's the most relevant thing for you.
I
And
mean, you see
now,
those movies where they would have like the stacks of stuff and stay to like what was it the story about uh Pretty in Pink or whatever it was, and she's not
Mhm.
not Pretty and that one too, but the
Right.
one with what's her name that takes place in Beverly Hills, and she's
Mhm.
like her boyfriend's the lawyer, and they all do the research together because they got to find
Right.
all the stuff in the stacks and the case studies, and they get the right case, you win, right? This
Yeah.
is like replacing all that with an AI
Yeah.
to at least
Yeah.
narrow the field, needle in the
Absolutely.
haystack.
Absolutely. And, it's a field where there's a lot of research and a lot of big money going into it, right? And so you have areas like Google Scholar, and a lot of different approaches to the same thing. And so that was the first thing I looked at. They have a lot of different approaches looking at traditional sort of graph-based systems where everything's relational. And instead of having an atomic brick of words that you create a mathematical representation of. The way that a lot of these systems traditionally worked in the past was there would be relations between words and they would be graphed one to another. And now, when you have a large amount of data that's publicly accessible and free for the public, like court decisions, right? That's a great thing to use that technology on because it allows us to traverse through stare decisis very quickly.
Yeah, like research or research data, right? Like figuring out
Exactly.
what's going on with the stars. You can only look and figure out so much. You can add a lot of
Exactly.
data and use data analytics. But then if you have pattern identification systems, you get much more detail and you get, instead of a word, you get like a whole research paper as an input and then the elements within it. And the same thing for like, so it's like, or your whole health data record and all the information within it. It's like more complex. But then, yeah, so I'm curious, like, what the progress was. Yeah, just going on,
Yeah.
just trying to unpack it for other folks who eventually will listen to this and be like, what's he talking about? And I just want to make sure I'm on track too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what I began to realize was this embedding technology had a interesting use case that I feel like is very disruptive to the traditional method of, graph and relational data mapping in order to build these sorts of profiling recommendation processes. And obviously, the one everyone knows super well is the Facebook social graph, right? That's their whole moat. That's their bread and butter. Infamous through scandals and leaks. Basically, the way that Facebook models your data through not just Facebook, but also Instagram, potentially WhatsApp. It's a bit of a black box. We don't really know what goes in there, but every time you as an individual like a post or follow a person, all of those links get connected to one another in this massive database. We're talking about probably the most data ever into any single database ever in the history of computer science. Uh,
Google too. Alphabet's a beast, right? Because all our YouTube viewing or responses or
True,
reactions, they pick up on Android cameras. Apple keeps a barrier there, but Google might get your camera feed too.
true.
It's
Google
so
has it.
many. Google has a ton, right? Both of them are like the big beasts in the sector
Yeah.
by far.
So both Alphabet and Meta, they have these massive graph databases on all of their users, and that's their bread and butter. That's because they know based on the types of content not just you interact with, but your friends interact with, the content that the people that interact with the content you interact with, that they also interact with, traversing down the list,
Yeah.
um, they're able to know scarily well what it is that you want. And the it brings a necessary question about data privacy because ultimately, in order for them to be able to serve you relevance, in order for them to be able to serve you curation for what you want, they have to know everything about not just you, but the people you associate with and the people that associate with the things that you associate with. And that has huge privacy implications. And now the way that I see it with modern day embedding AI embedding technologies and natural language processing is if users are interacting with AI agents on a one-to-one level at a more in-depth and a more personal level, and there's
Using it for
information.
therapy, right? You and I
Right.
use it for like, help me with my life and my career. And we should add in Microsoft has been doing the same thing in business processes for years,
Mhm.
where they have business data that no one else has for business processes, business behavior, employee behavior.
Salesforce
Data.
is a big part of that one too.
Huge.
Huge.
So all of those data sets, some more business, some more personal, some more close to this space of entrepreneurial. Curiously, as we've noted, and I think I highlighted in this and feel like it's our greater opportunity, the local entrepreneurs kind of being left out of the game. It's
Mhm.
not really fully mapped and not really fully supported. And there's a trust factor for a lot of our friends that will, bookmark this. But one of the conversations I want to have is like what our experience is with our friends who aren't in network of such a geeky, businessy, ambitious thing, but where we have like in-depth personal experience of our friends. All right. Yours in London or in Tel Aviv, mine here or in Montreal, who are just like they're artisans in their neighborhood, right? And
Yeah.
or doing stuff at a smaller scale. And it's like we don't get those business process. We don't get that super personalization. We just get pushed a whole bunch of ads for because we're free users of the products
Mm.
generally. So when you're a free user, they take that data and say, oh, someone's paying. Who's paying? The big corporations are paying to try
Mhm.
to personalize to you. But it's
Absolutely.
and I don't mind having the right Nikes sometimes, but it's always Nikes, or
Yeah.
it's always this weird commercial product or it's this crypto ad. Anyway, bookmark that. Continue with where you were going. So you like Alpha Grove perspective on this, right?
Right.
In light of this commercialization of the data and the import of it, where were you going with that? Where was your
Yeah.
thinking taking you?
So the traditional method of having these relational graphs for tracking people essentially is very it has a lot of very nefarious privacy implications towards them. And so with AlphaGrove, I was focusing on, okay, how can we develop similar toolings, right, where we can achieve the same sort of outcomes, where we're able to provide personalized, curated, relevant endpoints for users, right? To provide that relevant signal out of the noise, whether that's, originally a case out of a library of different legal opinions, or if it's a specific shoe out of a library of different shoe brands that want to advertise to somebody, right? That's the endpoint that we want to get, but instead of doing it in a way where our moat is a giant extractive, privacy non-respecting graph, we're doing it on an atomic level where every user is represented by a personalized, embedding vector that can be as detailed or as undetailed as the user wants. It provides just the perfect amount of relevancy for them as they want. It's mutable. It adapts to the user's changes over time, and most importantly, it doesn't connect to anybody else. If they don't want it to be associated with anyone else, it won't be. And it will still just be exactly as relevant as they would want it to be.
So
And so
your
that,
idea was to actually create a product for people to create their profiles, to manage their profiles. Was that the plan for Alpha Grove? I mean, I know you were doing political surveying as a
Mhm.
thing, right? To get more nuanced reflection of a population's interest instead of stupid polling. I
Yeah.
think you were going in the direction of smart polling, right?
Well, with Alpha Grove, the stage that we were really getting at was initially just figuring out the building blocks of this and understanding, how are we going to get the data structured? How do we want to get the different embeddings laid out? And how could we apply it to a bunch of different areas, right? And so my academic background comes in political science. That's what I studied in university. So I found it very fascinating to be able to go into that because it's an area where you can get a lot of detailed nuance. I was doing these surveys out in the United Kingdom. That's where I was living over the summer because you've got a very diverse population, not just in terms of things like ethnicity, religious background, income levels, but also political diversity. And additionally, it's an English-speaking population, which is important for being able to have this data all operate on a single level, linguistically. So we were really looking at, okay, is there something here? And as I was researching into the different political research throughout the UK over the summer, we were able to really see some interesting, interesting capabilities for being able to group people and provide different, more nuanced takes that more than just, okay, tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 how satisfied you are with the prime minister, right?
Yeah.
There's not really a lot of nuance in
Or
that.
do you like this policy or that law or not? It's very
Exactly.
binary. Or like there's this the most sophisticated mapping of American political demography, psychography recently has been this seven nations thing. That within the US, some people did the research, and this was before AI, to say it's not just red versus blue, it stacks according to values. And the values like have this mapping of like politically conservative but economically liberal. You want,
Yeah.
government to share, but you want everyone to take care of the environment or to be, have Christian values or to be family oriented. And then the other way, I want liberalism. I want people to have free choice and do whatever they want to, more than I care that there's common values. And I'm economically conservative. I don't want the government to tell us what to do or to define the spending. I want a free market because I think that works better. So values you get, and they just could do it with like four different major factors that created seven nations, and a frustrated majority shows up in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And it was very helpful for people doing political strategy as parties or as candidates to understand the who's really there with a little bit more nuance, but it's still crude. What you're talking about is actually if you listen to people and let them talk about what they want to talk about. And this is what we got to even this weekend with my experiment with the Locamor app as it is. If you really open it up a lot, and in fact, if you frame it in a pretty grand way, and this is where politics for Plato and Aristotle was like, this is where everything comes to life. So I've had friends who've said, I don't care about politics. I hate politics. I'm like, I cannot stop loving the idea that Plato and Aristotle put forward for me, which is like, you want to do metaphysical right down to science. You want to do the human anthropological and the human and family and the interhuman and relationships. If you want to study life, the political is where it all comes together. If you're a
That's,
generalist that wants to have mastery in some form, and in this era, to do
mhm,
it with best practice, ultra humane approaches like Deborah's stuff, how you hold a really good dinner party and groove with friends,
mhm,
all the way to like deliberative democracy. And then this freaking data piece that suddenly gives people agency to define themselves without a poll and to still
mhm,
find patterns and groups, communities
mhm.
that we can identify with that allow us to be more unique than like, oh, you got to be politically conservative and this, you're this and a that. It's like I change depending on what the issue is, even. Right?
Absolutely.
It's like the weather. It's like not easily predicted, even.
We're seeing this a lot more, especially in my generation too, where people fall on all sorts of different areas when it comes to actual opinions on actual policies that don't really mesh with a singular idea of a left or a right. And when you look at political systems, not just in the United States, but also in like the UK and Canada, um, you never really see nuance on higher than 4 dimensions, or sorry, 2 dimensions. You might have a left, right, one direct dimension. You might add an up and down in terms of trying to add nuance between social and fiscal views. Um, but the type of data that we're processing here, these embedding models operate on like thousands of dimensions. And so we're able to not say when you're reading for example, a poll from YouGov or from Pew or from any of these legacy firms, and they'll say, okay, X percent of Republicans, Y percent of Democrats, and N percent of independents feel this way about this statement, right? But at the same time, like, what does that even mean when people don't even know how they're supposed to identify? All these parties are massively fragmented. So if you just actually talk to people, not as Republican or Democrat as independent, but you talk to people as people, and you understand their thinking, you talk with them in a yes, tell me more mindset. Then we take that information, we create this vector embedding profile. We are able to cluster people into groups where they kind of create their own parties in a way. And it doesn't fit into a specific area.
This is
And
this is a I'm just pause here for a second. And yeah, if you have a piece of paper, do track notes for where you want to continue because what's really exciting for me is this polyarchic framework where we're really dealing with an emergent phenomenon of people grouping dynamically with what excites them with an influencer that says it well. And they're like, that podcast added to my political thing. I can't quite say what it is, but I know what something that they said was really cool. And it can, oh, was it this? Yeah, something like that. And then another one that's contrasting and different. You're like, oh, there's something in there that I like that really tickled me deeply was I can't put my finger on it, but you just link to the podcast, and suddenly we have this, or my friend who I was with. Oh yeah, no, Elliot's really saying some charming and interesting stuff. I feel kind of awkward about some of it. Boom. Okay.
Mhm,
Add
mhm,
Elliot's public persona about his political views that he's generated with an AI white paper or a post in Instagram. And I'm like, ah, okay. And then your intelligence. So what we're seeing, right, at a meta level is it's curious that we both converged on the political and how
mhm,
there's this new kind of, I wouldn't call it anarchistic because it's not quite fully whack like that. It's like within the existing system, we're craving more than Coke and Pepsi. And
mhm,
they're only giving us Coke and Pepsi because that's what the system's set up to support. And yet within those parties, there's this fragmentation that the Democrats and now MAGA's going through it in the Republicans. They're starting to see, oh, post-Trump and not really getting what we want or they want from that. Okay,
yeah.
the system isn't responsive and the parties aren't responsive. Coke and Pepsi, curiously, years ago, everyone thinks, oh, they own the supply chain, but they're competing dynamically and they've created like this farm league of beverage inventors. And then
Mhm,
they've tried to buy up a lot of it. Now there's more independent distribution happening to also handle what I saw yesterday at this cool restaurant that Callie took me to called Joy. Two locations in LA, not a big chain, really great Taiwanese. And the fridge, yeah, there was Coke and Pepsi or Coke and Diet Coke, but it was mostly artisanal craft beer, non-alcoholic IPA, import from Taiwan, something made in Montecito. I mean, what's happening is like, oh, we're getting something that tickles so many different people in that fridge.
mhm,
And when we look at what the political could be, it's like, oh, okay, so how are we going to change education? That's a big rock and a
mhm,
lot of intransigent existing stuff in it. And I've been engaging on the political, and I'm sure you tracked it in the UK. So I'm going to be advising for who has the money, the big parties, the candidates. It still kind of unfolds as a manipulation technique. We've got, and it has been the case for 30 years for me, and I know you're tracking this. Our digital domain is still a wilderness that's been co-opted by the Hudson's Bay Company, right? Our big aggregators that are
right.
only selling beaver pelt, a blanket, a hat, and I don't care about your personal life or your local thing. There's no money in that. We're just going to sell Coke and Pepsi and eyeballs and attention to the big guys.
If it's not in the Roebuck catalog, no one's buying it.
Exactly, exactly. And so there's this opportunity we're seeing at the local level, what you see in Tel Aviv, what I see, here in Topanga and in Highland Park and Mount Washington or Brooklyn or in all the cities around the world. And now a lot of the towns, it's like, forget your mall and your
Mhm,
Coke and Pepsi choices. We want individual property owners. We want individual creators. They're doing it in their garage. They're doing it from their house. They're doing it online. This is like now free expression, a free marketplace that can allow for much more nuance. The digital nation, we've been raped of our data. We don't have our digital selves. We don't have any really digital control. We don't even own our digital farms, our 4 acres and a mule. Locamore is about helping people get a taste of what it's like to
Hmm.
get control on just the digital domain first, which
Hmm.
unlocks the physical at the local level and the physical in the community connection level. That's kind of the most abstract proposition that we're talking about. It's like there's nothing in the way for us to claim it and create the society we know in our hearts and minds should be more like what it is, more responsive, more dynamic, more distributed, more community centered, right? More individually centered. That's the new politics as far as I can map it and I can loosely see where it goes, right? But only loosely knowing like, oh, we just want to unleash people in a more sane framework and a sane sandbox to play in this digital political realm with
Hmm.
agency and with their bodies, their data, so that they can actually put together themselves out of these fragments and what's in them to come out and add refinement to how your digital reflection starts to look more like you. And you start to
Absolutely.
see yourself in the mirror instead of this Frankenstein that's bought a bunch of Cokes and a bunch of Amazon products and a bunch of Google videos and a bunch of porn and a bunch of this. And it's just like, is that me? Right? Is that what they're marketing to? Why do the ads just feel like they don't get me at all? Right?
Yeah, and when it comes as well to the political side of it, and what really drove me to pursue Alpha Grove, was realizing about how, these are important and necessary tools for decision makers. When I was in university and I did a course on uh, intelligence collection and state tradecraft, uh, and my professor used to work at CIA, and he was saying about the most important part of our job is making sure that decision makers have the most accurate information available to them. We don't look at this politically, we look at this in terms of we're providing an accurate product, because if we don't do that, then they make bad decisions. And you look at the past three presidential elections, and the pollster products have failed on every single one of them in one way or another. And as a result, what does that mean? That means that decision makers don't have the necessary tools for them to be able to make informed decisions. And I'm not just talking about the people running the DNC and the RNC in Washington, because ultimately, in a democracy, in theory, we're the final decision makers.
Well,
The
except that
people.
we do have this moment though where it was like, and you were close to it being in the UK. Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, Peter Thiel, and Alex Karp, right?
Mhm.
They were advising Trump because they were like, this eschatological disaster needs to happen. And Thiel thinks that he needs to push us in that direction so the change actually happens, push us through the pain, right? And they're big believers in that, but they've got government contracts on the orders of the billions, tens of billions to very self-interestedly have them say, yeah, we need to push this from the center and the top using the people's data. They're literally doing this, and that was the first instance of it. Now they're in government, they're empowering the NSA, right? The National Security Administration that had access to all the data, and now the back door is open to the AI data.
Mhm.
We know that
Absolutely.
because the government contracts they're getting with the Department of Energy and so on. It's like a safe packaging to say all the data is up for important research uses, but guess who has a back door in there?
Mhm.
NSA, CIA, FBI. FBI, not so much, but the NSA, it's like for Homeland Security, right? I don't think they're malicious too much, but it's weird because it's a lot of self-interested power players that control our government, that are in the government getting contracts. You now don't
Mhm.
have a firewall between them and the elected officials or the people administering because they get hired after they're compliant by these companies. There's no, conflict of interest rules. So we have a very conflicted interest elite. It's
Mhm.
true. that
Mhm.
just keeps feeding themselves, whether they intend it or not, and they're not looking at the possibility that we're looking. It's like, what if you just empower people and listen to them and let them steer us collectively where they come to consensus, right? Define yourself, be self-expressed. And this is my theory of change in a nutshell. It's like help people express themselves clearly, see what really is true or isn't over time, have the reflections of your friends say, no, that's a little bit of bullshit there, Scott. Okay. I didn't ask for your freaking feedback. Leave me alone, right?
What I,
The AI,
yeah,
but let me check in with the AI. Is my friend right? You know, no, maybe. No, be harsh with me. Oh, there's something there, Scott. Take a look. Whatever. Get clear about yourself and then get clear what our consensus priorities and our consensus actionable things to do are. And we're going to get shit done. The potholes will be fixed. Apple's
yeah.
transcription will start to work. The
Mhm.
interoperability with Android, hey, fix that stuff. Or our government, a sensible
Mhm.
Taiwanese model of healthcare with private providers, but universal access, extra for the luxury people so they stay out of the way. Go get your plastic surgery and get extra care. Pay for the cutting edge. Awesome. But we're going to tax you guys when you do that so we can keep the whole generalized system available. The models have already been worked out. What's missing, right? To actually get this accomplished, get this across the line.
What I find fascinating too, as a quick aside on the Palantir part, and this is additionally what I find interesting when you look at technology, and particularly how it intersects with Wall Street, because Wall Street, they like the numbers, but they really don't understand the way the technology works. And, I remember reading something someone said about how Palantir is like 10 years ahead of the competition. And now I've used Palantir's AI platform before to build. It's a good platform, right? It's very good. But basically all it is it's just a very nice abstraction over a bunch of open source tools, right? Like Apache, I believe Apache Spark is the big one, but a bunch of different open source tools. What their moat really is what you were just describing, is their sales and engineering team for deployed engineers and their deltas and their echoes, as they call them internally. They are very good at being able to build out solutions for people using their technology. But at the same time, it goes against, like, their technology is built off the back of open source tooling. So it kind of goes backwards against the ethos of the Apache Foundation and the GNU project and the people that have created the software or created the licenses behind things that enable these multi-billion, multi-trillion dollar companies to be able to do what they're doing.
Yeah, which is the
So,
system level that I think you'll appreciate in the VC backed version where it's like, we're playing the money game. I'm Mark Andreessen. I have hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm still playing this game to get more. And that's
mhm,
really what the game is. And the whole VC system and the private equity system is that game by people who just, you can literally have Adam Sandler looking at Mark Zuckerberg,
mhm,
or recently it was not Al Pacino, the other guy, a famous actor who was like both of them at Zuckerberg in separate events going, dude, when do you have enough? You own the social graph. You own the social graph. You own 51% control of that thing, and you're still going for more, not better.
mhm.
Like, hey, wake up, dude. It was Facebook for like scoring chicks. Was that really? Oh, you're still doing that. You're still like wearing the chain and trying to be like cool. Is the goal? Is that the goal, dude? Is what you have a foundation? What's it doing? Is it measurably, even scientifically trying to do better the way that you're trying to get more? Right? They didn't say this, but this is the essence of the problem with Mark Andreessen, with the whole money field, and with Peter Thiel and Alex Karp. It's like and like they're all bros going for the biggest score. It's like go for the biggest score of impact. Go for the biggest score of actually enabling people, right? And that's where, so what Thiel got right with Y Combinator, and he says this explicitly, you get in the game, look for an opening like we're looking, greenfield, try to lock in network effects. Yeah, I get that. There's super beneficial things. They have customer lock-in and monopolistic effects with governments on an open source tool. And
Yeah.
because security has this extra layer, security becomes even harder for them to change providers. in the NSA and
Mhm.
whatever. And it's the
Mhm.
same with, Microsoft embedded or whichever server systems embedded in companies. Those companies know we'll give it to you for free once you're locked in after 1,000 customers. Good luck getting your data out, right?
Mhm.
Good luck retraining your team for the UI that we bring, right? It's just
Exactly.
such a big headache. It's not worth it. Pay the tax,
Mhm.
right? And that's our whole system is operating on those monopolistic, non-responsive lock-in to make more money to be the bro system.
Mhm. 100%.
In the shorthand, right? So that's the hack that's driving this whole system off a cliff to get collectively. Social
Mhm.
cliff, economic inequality cliff, environmental cliff. Those are all
Yeah.
drive, and they're
I
all
think,
just like
I think
steering their weird Ferraris straight towards the cliff.
And I think it's important to also recognize that none of these corporations, right, none of these products would be able to exist without the hard work and fundamentally the intellectual property of projects owned by the Apache Foundation, by the Linux Foundation, by GNU. And they are the building blocks of everything.
Oh, and
And
then for the AI, it's all our data, our videos, our work processes, our therapeutic processes, everything that's been shared in chat, everything that's shared in WhatsApp, all of it, they've been gleaning it and then abstracting from it for the AIs to appear to be intelligent, automating
Mhm,
our own patterns back to us
mhm,
and
absolutely.
selling it to us for 20 bucks a month
For now.
for now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the game, right? In so many ways. And it's interesting. I think, where we came together, I didn't know the depth to which you've been reflecting on it, how you're exposed to it. And that's why this podcasty interview for ourselves and for the team is important because you're unpacking context. We're unpacking context together that, Savada's approached, I think, and other members of the team have an inkling of, but not why the dataification of Deborah's work matters so
Mhm,
much. Because if we don't turn it into data, it's all, well, you had something beautiful happen in the living room, but you have no power after you leave that living room as a result.
absolutely.
When you turn it into data and we collectively take agency in that and individually take responsibility, like literally that word that I keep using is like response and then separate word ability slammed
Mhm,
together. We
mhm,
need to generate our own responsibility, and taking responsibility in the conventional sense is one thing. To be able to
mhm,
really, otherwise, we're powerless and it's all chesed with no gevura. The
mhm,
gevura is turning it into datable stuff, and the beauty, the tiferet in the classic, Kabbalistic scheme is like there's loving kindness, feels good, there's
mhm,
discipline to take the time to structure it and shape it and say, no, that's really me. And to have the discipline and discernment to say, that's my boundary. That's not me. That's my boundary. That is me. And do that as an art. Like you're Michelangelo, you're writing your Torah, you're shaping your own David of you. And that's where beauty literally yields in the intersection between these things. Why the interpersonal and Deborah's wisdom practice is crucial, and where the disciplined ordering, because I've said this to a couple of team members, we're all right brain, left brain people. We're all generalists. We have specialties within that, but everyone on this team is exceptionally broad thinking and capable of good communication, but really hewing to what they know and be able to talk about it. When you watch Deborah's interview, she spent 5 years developing an app that does really cool shit called
mhm,
Swell, like an asynchronous podcast tool. So she's right brain, left brain, developed the tech, worked with the coding team, but very at the human level that she represents
mhm,
in this whole thing. And likewise with Jamie. Jamie's like, Topanga community member, totally comedian, playful, but she's like tactical. She's like, dude, we need to turn this into a simple thing that we can bring into community. And then, like you, take Deborah's thing and your thing and turn it into code that another ambassador in Brooklyn can imitate what we're doing with a team, and it's going to rock. But
exactly.
her. So it's so interesting what's converging in our team this way. Okay. So yeah, any other like what yeah, the bridge from Alpha Growth, if you want to like expand on a little bit more, or do you want to branch into like what you're seeing as Locamore at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the bridge from Alpha Grove is pretty self-explanatory. I believe my dad showed you some of the work that I've been working on, and then, he connected us right away. You said like this is exactly the sort of stuff that I've been working on. We need to get in touch, and we've been very synchronized since then. And I think that the approach that Locamore is looking at with trying to find this underserved market, this huge underserved area, um, that really is being left behind is a very, very noble and very important cause to look into. And like you said earlier, kind of this whole Trojan play there. Um, I was having conversations over Shabbat and Beit Shemesh with people about this concept. And, you know, what I found most interesting is how when it comes to new technology, new toolings, a big part of the conversation was like, okay, what are you going to do when like Google or ChatGPT or Meta, right, create a similar product? And I think the way I was looking at it, the way I was telling them is like their focus, especially for someone like ChatGPT, who far and away is the largest consumer AI brand, they're going to be focused on connecting with, Burger King and McDonald's and Coca-Cola and these huge companies. But at the same time, like the area the where the most potential is here at the local level, which is, a super resilient part of the economy. And ever since COVID has been super underserved. I mean, when COVID hit, you had businesses that had to shut down, if not overnight, then within months, where people's entire livelihoods, restaurants, stores, small businesses, completely destroyed. And in order to recover from that, there needs to be a new paradigm because the world has changed in many, many ways since 2020. And I think that Locamore as a tool is going to represent a new paradigm in how individuals transact with one another, how they do business with one another. And I really mean one another, not just do business with a company or a huge mega corporation that then turns around and does business with another person acting as their intermediary, because that's what everyone would love us to do. Say, you focus on being down there, transact with your mega corporation, and they'll sort out all the messy details between people. But what we know
Like
is that,
basically the Airbnb and Uber layer for everything will
yeah,
be through the big AI companies,
mhm,
and they'll be your interface like Google was. They're all trying for this, for
mhm,
your interface with the big companies, because that's
exactly.
if they're the market maker
Mhm,
with intelligence, and they're all competing for this. And, again, the moat and the thing is they're looking at aggregate numbers. We know there's a billion OpenAI users, most
mhm,
of them casual, most people once or twice. It turns out only 1% paying,
yeah.
approximately 3% or something. There's this concentration of doing something local with
Mhm,
people in person to
mhm,
really emphasize it. Like, when I was down in Mount Washington, or I guess it was Eagle Rock yesterday for dinner with Callie, all the stores are artisanal stores.
mhm,
Most of the buildings are owned by individuals in that neighborhood. Some people own a couple of buildings, but it's
mhm,
not like the mall. It's not like
mhm,
Burbank where it's like this wall of mall owned by Westfield or one big guy who wants you to come in, go to the Chinese franchise thing that's excellent, but you're in their environment with the fake grass and
right.
the freaking corporate back stores for triple A leases only. So no artisanal can ever get in there because you don't have the credit. And people are like, I guess I've been kicked out of my job by the AI. The industry, Hollywood's a mess. I got to do something out of my garage. I'm going to do it in my living room. That's who we're going for. We're going for the losers in the economic game, who we feel are actually the winners. That, Gen Alpha, Gen Z is like moving from college into these neighborhoods and going like this. It's this thing.
The second as well, the second that mall to like that lease on that store in that mall doesn't make financial sense to that company that's in there, it's gone,
Yeah.
right? That's an incredibly fickle customer base to be targeting for. And what I've found time and time again is that when you're dealing with people as individuals, we're very resilient. Like that person in that garage, if whether they succeed or they fail, if they fail, they're going to get back up and try again, try doing something else, right? Because that's what we're programmed to do. We're programmed to be resilient and be able to continue and push forward until we thrive. And I think that's the area where it really provides us the opportunity to serve actually the most resilient and the best part of the market, which are the people that will stick around because like I said, once that company finds that this no longer makes financial sense for us, it's gone. And then
They
within
fire the employees and they leave town, and the mall doesn't care either. Whereas when you're in Topanga and you've seen who showed up for community resilience for the fires, for mutual aid for the businesses, who's throwing in, who's hosting stuff, even if your business fails, you're like, hey, come on over, work here. Hey, Chumash, you broke your leg, live rent free. These
yeah,
things happen in community context. Resilience is there in a different way. We want to just, what we're like is like turbo boost for community intelligence and resilience, personal intelligence and resilience. These become huge levers that, unless you're really thinking at that ground level, you're living in community, you're not going to even see it if you're at Facebook in the executive suite living in, like Kauai, like Hanalei Bay, right? I
yeah.
have people serving me. Life's great, you know?
And as an aside as well with the ChatGPT user base thing from before, I think it's important to recognize that what I tell people is we're still very early. We're incredibly early. Like ChatGPT, is the largest consumer brand, but you have to remember, like you said, with the amount of users that are paying, is a very, very small percentage. A lot of people don't really know the ways that the technology even currently can augment their lives and their day to day, not to mention the way that it will in the future. And additionally, here's an interesting tidbit is that there's data that shows when school is not in session, you see double-digit percentage drops in traffic to ChatGPT. So very much it exists to be a hey, write my essay for me tool, right? And so that signals to me, look, there's still a lot of space for us to move forward with this. And personally, I am a strong believer that ChatGPT will be the AOL of AI.
It's interesting. We'll see what happens with it. I think all the intelligence they're building is brilliant. You can see that, like, even China can be like, oh, let's just use it, train our model on what's working in their model, and reverse engineer as they did to create a
Mhm.
more efficient model by challenging it to replicate what that thing's already doing. But can you encode this more simply and more energy efficiently? And it's like, boom, you got these copycats that can just mirror the pattern because it's all still large language models, not neural nets, right? And even the neural net technology, when it does arrive, someone's going to do the same thing to take their crude neural net to improve itself based on interacting with the fancy one. There's no way they can stop it. So the propagation of the intelligence to open systems, even if they're not the total Ferrari, most people don't need the Ferrari. They can take the Ferrari Light that's like,
Mhm.
1/10 the cost and be like, good enough. And
Yeah.
the pairing of community intelligence and intimacy and people like Deborah. So getting back to our current product now and where we're going. So the Ikigai experiment that I ran with the Ikigai that you shaped, I'm curious about how that got shaped, first of all, to be engaging with me, what you put in the product definition for it to play the game with me, right? So I shared a doc today about Ikigai Plus, right, which is
Mhm.
more of a sophisticated framing than Ikigai has
Mhm.
and includes this level of full human development at Maslow Plus, including the spiritual. Because axiomatically, from Torah, and I will
Mhm.
claim that, give credit to where it's due, and according to my St. John's education of classical education, going back to the ancients, Aristotle and Plato and Socrates, if you can play a multi-dimensional game, your heart
Mhm.
wants to. And everyone
Yeah.
has different specialties at different times in their life for which part of the game they want to play. But it's from the interpersonal to want to start a family, to want to be a great dad, to I want to do a great business for my family, to I want to prepare for a family, to I want to do this other thing that's my artistic expression I never had the chance to in retirement. I need a sabbatical. All these things that people might want to do, the game of life sucks now. The tooling is horrible for it. So that pairing, like we're really talking about better gameplay, better
Mhm.
design of the game, human
Mhm.
enablement and coaching with it, fun
Uh-huh.
and playful with great food, killer. And then, that you're getting this better um, collaborators for all your projects as a result, because everyone's like, in the language integral, all quadrants, all levels. Everyone's
Mhm.
aspiring to be able to be like, oh, I get you, Grandma. You're a crude, ultra leftist, ultra rightist, binary thinking. What's turning you on, Grandma? Oh,
Mhm.
what's that thing on Fox News or what Rachel Maddow said that really lit you up? Tell me more. You can
Yeah.
get with her and you can handle a systems thinker and be like, whoa, you're way beyond my level, but how did you get to that super systems thinker? You're already playing at all levels. We
Mhm.
internally are going to be doing this. I could
Mhm.
see it starting to shape out where you just meet people where they are, like you said, let them pursue it and poke to the edges. And then I love this display of here's the profile. Here's how we
Mhm.
see dividing it into a kind of rubric. Do you agree
Mhm.
with that? Oh, no, I want a different framing with myself. That's my public, that's my private. Okay, how you want it, right? But
Mhm.
we're providing a template that's based on, I think it's Robert Keegan's work is evidence-based evolution of consciousness. It's how they kind of frame it. That's the best game I've heard. And
Mhm.
if we keep that psycho development profile in mind, you're giving people the most latitude where, like your LLM models, you're giving a structure against which people will be challenged to say, can I come up with a better one? Oh, you know what? That's actually pretty good. And we're
Yeah.
actually providing information for our own system to evolve in how individuals better understand themselves and how they better collaborate, in essence, right?
Yeah. Yeah. With the Ikigai framework and how it was built initially, I mean, it all really stems beginning from the prompt, right? And so I have here the prompt in front of me. It's a very, very surface level prompt. This is what I love about your reaction initially to the proof of concept is because like this is very surface level, and I want to try and get as much data as I can from the team in terms of
You want to bring it up
how
on
they,
the screen, actually?
sure, yeah,
Screen share for a
my
moment,
screen.
just so we can like see what it looks like and guide people into how they navigate into it? Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
So right now, all the AI agent knows about itself is that it's an Ikigai discovery coach. As we develop out, the Locamor product, then we'll be able to, and as we develop out the different stages of the onboarding flow, we'll be able to instruct the AI with more details, specifically about what it actually is. But for this point in time, it's very important that we keep it as focused on its specific task as possible. And now this is going to be an interesting thing as we explore because there's a lot of different areas to fire upon. Um, and the technology gets better and better every week, but there's going to become a limit where as we try and make it do more and as much as possible, it kind of will begin to fall apart. We're finding that with this specific use case, with this prompt that's very basic, it's able to work very, very well. So first, we just give it a very brief explanation. We tell it the user's name as it's brought in from Telegram or WhatsApp or whatever the platform is. And then we give it some principles. First, we want it to be warm. We want it to feel human, more than just efficiency. This isn't supposed to be a survey. This is a conversation. This is to follow, and then the next step is to follow their energy. If someone shows their sentiment is really excited about something, when they light up about something, that's a signal to the AI, hey, target this thing. Try and understand more details about that. This is something the user really, really likes. Use their language, mirror their vocabulary and metaphors. People want to talk with something that sounds like them. So if they're speaking with a certain type of vernacular, if they're using very advanced vocabulary, or if they're using a more simplistic vocabulary, we want to make the conversation as accessible as possible. And that's the beautiful thing about AI is that it can be accessible to everyone because as long as you're speaking the same language, it will be able to know how to talk to you. Um, Bridge quadrants naturally. So this goes into the Ikigai quadrants, which we'll explore once I'm done talking about the principles. It's not going to say, okay, now we've done talking about love. Let's talk about what we're good at. It naturally finds those inflection points where it says, it seems like you really love doing X. Maybe you're good at doing Y, and it finds those natural conversation flows. Then probing specifics. We want to try and have as great a number of specific details as possible. Uh, I don't like we still have a ways to go in terms of developing out the actual profiling engine, in terms of breadth versus depth. So for our initial onboarding, we're going to kind of want to target both so that we can tune the dials later on. And then notice contradictions. And this is an interesting one. When we notice a contradiction or a tension in what the user is saying, we don't just flag it like a computer and say, aha, we want to explore it because clearly there's an area where there's something to be unlocked. And this is an interesting area that we can kind of, I believe it goes into it more later on. Yeah, intersection mining. So we'll be able to get to that later. So
Cool.
then we
Then
just
it goes
described
into the Ikigai framework, which I, just got
framework.
it. And then I just want to add in there, I think we're going to want to add a couple of other zones that become an 8-factor Ikigai instead of a 4-factor,
Mhm.
maybe in stages, but I think we can
Mhm.
get pretty good distilled on your who, your
Mhm.
how you grow and learn and
Mhm.
take in information and collaborate because how is really important. People are very different. So what's complementary to you? Are you introvert, extrovert, all these things? And then, the who maps to that closely as well. What kind of people you want to work with that are your complement for whatever you're up to, your mastery level, and who your mentors might be. And then this idea of the challenge, that there's also this idea of like, do you want to do it at just the personal level? Are you talking your family and friends? Are you talking about your town, your community level of place, purpose, or whatever, the globe, and how you care about your bioregion or the planet? Or are you
Mhm.
talking cosmic, your metaphysical place in the world?
Yeah.
Those become, how the game really gets expansive. So it's really the great game, right? In addition to these framings for defining your shingle, right? What your work offering is or what your path priorities are. Some people are like, no, my path priority, I'm retired. I want to go boom. I've got a year gap year after college. I want to go deep and really
Mhm.
get myself. So what I'm getting really key here, more than anything, is our first magic that because we could have just gone very functional. What's my shingle and my offer? And let's do matching magic as soon as we can. The first proposition is really interesting. It doesn't require any network effects. It's just the magic mirror. It's you on you, maybe with friends, right?
Mhm.
Ideally, we're going to nudge you. So we can let people just engage with this thing and say, you watch the video, you get that structurally we're different. We want to do this where we own it and you own it. And here's the proof, and maybe here's some testimonials from Tim Berners-Lee. And we're going to do it in a way that's about building your trust through the structure of friends to friends approach. Maybe you want to do it with some friends at a dinner party, right? That's the trust machine is really our moat. Our first foray into this is you on yourself, maybe with friends.
Mhm.
once you get the taste that we're modeling, we're walking the talk internally, how we roll, that it's not just about you as a client, as a data captured thing in our game, but you as part of a community that's on this journey to make the world work, to make your life work together. Oh, this is a really different kind of brand. And where goodwill is usually like the secret sauce for Coca-Cola's recipe that everyone loves is, and the brand that makes you feel good with the Christmas ads, that's goodwill. We're saying now the ultimate goodwill is a trust engine.
Absolutely. And what I love about the way that we're doing this approach is that, with this AI revolution, the initial thought from people, especially incumbents within any given industry, is how do I get this AI to do the stuff that I've already been doing one way? Versus the way I like to think about it is how do we use the AI to be able to do what it's good at a massive level of scale, right? If we were wanting to do this 20 years ago with human surveyors, we wouldn't be able to do it at any sort of scale. And with AI, we're able to have these sorts of in-depth conversations that are very detailed and back and forth, where it would probably provide um, a lot of mental like stress, and not stress in the negative sense, but a lot of like mental energy on the surveyor to perform. We're able to do this where the users just put central to it, where they're like, I love talking about me. I love talking about the stuff I love. And we're able to provide them that and then be able to have that be reflected in a way that's useful for them. And what I want to explore or mention as well, when you say about the Ikigai Plus or the eight quadrants, this is the area that we really need to develop totally as a team, because that fundamentally is going to be our entire core technology.
That's the
Is
DNA. The DNA is
Yeah.
really the personal development and collaboration game that's the best in the world.
Hmm.
That we model it as a team in this way, being transparent, collaborative, not, Mandarin political corporation hierarchy with all its
Hmm.
sickness and its cap structure and its governance structure that's all not responsive, can't be, right? So
Hmm.
our biggest moat is that when it comes down to it, if Microsoft and OpenAI try to mirror this, oh, but we already have contracts to do this extractive thing with these 10 corporations. We've got to get this return because we're going public. And we've got promises to the VCs that gave us $1 billion 3 years ago and $100 billion last week. We're playing this old game, but we want to go over there. It's like,
Yeah.
good luck, guys. You're shackled. You can't move nimbly, community by community,
Hmm.
really doing this thing where the investment, the prioritization is the strengthening of you and your communities through
Hmm.
your own agency. We're a sandbox for you. Help us build a better sandbox for you from the beginning. We're doing this together internally. I just want to really emphasize how this corporation, this cooperation is what I call it, why it's the Eden cooperation, is it's a cooperation thing that we're doing. And it's for your internal Eden. We have it here and now. If you can gather yourself to be not stress monkey right now, you're in your own microcosm of Eden. If you can get to a nice warm climate that's not at war, God bless, Israel is at peace right now, relatively. Um, that's the next one, right? And then if you can cultivate that in your backyard, in your neighborhood, then we're really realizing it materially in the world. And the way to do it is to begin in our neighborhoods and in our houses and with our families. That's like, and that's nothing that these guys can ever get, that it's about family, which I'm going to emphasize again, being a huge voice for Judaism in its best form. Now, I don't
Hmm.
love all of it. And I don't think our trauma-informed behaviors in, wounded territory, people beating up on the local Palestinians is always the right thing to do. But we'll leave that aside. What I do know is right is family's the thing. The temple is at home, right? That's the most
That's what this
important.
Shabbaton at Beit Shemesh really taught me more than anything else as well. Come to a place and it's community, The weekend comes around, it's what everyone's waiting for, and and it's just everyone's at peace with one another and eating food, connecting, talking, um, being present. It's an
And you,
amazing.
and I think that's really embedded as like a core culture in pretty much every family everywhere. Like it's what people are craving where it's broken down, which is also a lot of everywhere. But
Yeah.
a friend who was working on the Eco Village project, she described how she moved out here, and her family, originally from Jamaica, had moved to an area outside of Boston, not affluent by any means, but they had like 40 family members that would gather together on Sundays, every Sunday. And she's like, I don't see anyone around here who has that. And that's gold. And I love what's coming up here. It's good cutting edge. I love our cool culture and the, gathering together for ecstatic dance and things, but y'all don't have this basic thing. Who's got the wealth then, right? There's an uneven distribution to accessing Eden, at least at the family level. And, churches are replacing it now and whatever, and some new congregations are reanimating it. But it's really, this is, I think, what I understand and what I believe is that this is an engine to support that in family as community, but also your communities of shared place and or purpose, interest, and affinity. These are the communities that stack as political entities, as it were, through our system that have no nuanced way of organizing or strengthening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and then to get back to the prompt here as well, just a quick little tidbit is that, we have our quadrant, right? And as it grows over time, it will adjust. But then what we have here, this looks like just two lines that you can easily gloss over, but this is really everything here. Because I don't have it actually right here. I need to go over to the onboarding flow, conversational agent.
We can look at mine. I mean, we're not going
Yeah.
to always have access to people's data. This is only at
Right.
the beginning that we're
Well, no,
trying.
this is just the logical flow.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to see if we could execute. Okay, here we go. Perfect. So this is showing me um, what the output actually looks like. So let me pull this up in a Z
And I'm just going to
example.
say, just while you're doing that, is like, part of the idea is we need to understand how this works for us so that we're
Mhm.
walking the talk and doing the program and just shaping it a little bit to inform our own intelligence, our Locamor intelligence. And then
Mhm.
it goes in the background where it just kind of becomes its own thing. We have the intelligence that we get to look at and find out what works for people, but we're not going to be able to look at people's data. We're fully encrypted. Your thing's going to be your thing, or my thing's going to be my thing, and no one will be able to look at it. It really becomes about the responsibility to shape your own entirely and your communities as a community, privately within the community. Some of them will be public. I'm going to continue in a public exercise so people can understand the bridge, which most AI companies don't do this, right? They don't explain the algorithm like we're going to. And try to make this very explainable to people, I think, is key so they understand what they are shaping and what we internally are doing to make that possible.
Absolutely. So I'm going to show just based off of the output from when you have your conversation chat sent in. Eventually, it goes through looking at the state, then building out this part that gets dynamically inserted in the prompt through that piece of code I showed you on the Google Doc. So this is what gets built in here. And so this is again still very simple. It's just based off our four quadrants. We're looking to find four key pieces of data within each of the quadrants. And now that could be increase, it could be decrease, and that's going to depend on the depth and specificity of the data we want to collect, how long we want the onboarding process conversation to be, because that's another key aspect is like how much time, like we could have a 5 hour conversation with these people and get a lot of information, but maybe they might get tired after a while. Um, it tracks it. It gives some insights it logs the insights of what sticks out so that the AI is able to remember not just the transcript conversation history, but the key points that are important to remember. And then also, it has a focus menu here at the bottom where it wants to try and steer the AI and say, okay, we've explored a lot about the love and world needs, but we need to focus more on the good at and the paid for side of it. So, we can steer the AI. And so again, all of that builds dynamically upon itself. Every single message builds more and more data where it's this great funnel where we have so much at the top, so much potential. And then as the user continues to go down a level and a level and a level, it becomes more and more targeted towards exactly what they want. And it'll just feel very, very natural. It'll feel like talking with a normal person where, if I'm meeting a stranger for the first time, you might make some small talk initially, but then you find something that you guys connect upon, and this will find something to connect upon with the user, right? It
Work with
will,
me. I went deep. I went deep and I was like, oh, you're listening really well. You're like the
yeah.
best listener I've ever dealt with, better than GPT, even because you're asking me about me with this
Mhm.
orientation, which is very like that's why people who finally hear about Ikigai, this Japanese framework for defining yourself in the most important factors, turns out to be a pretty universal framing. Again,
Mhm.
we're going to add these other quadrants to it to refine that to be even more satisfying. And then you're going to
Mhm.
do it through different domains of your life that are a priority for you. Oh, I need to dial it for my work because I'm changing my careers. You know, it's got to be about relationship and family because I've only got 2 years before I should have a baby. You know, I need to really get clear about which kind of men I'm dating and why, or vice versa, right?
Absolutely.
That these are different framings. I could also see while we're talking about this, running in parallel, do you just want to get your shingle up? Because most
Mhm.
people have this urgent thing to get
Mhm.
more side gig or main gig business. And like Deborah was saying, LinkedIn, she's been asking her people this thing. So LinkedIn doesn't really capture you, neither does Facebook. Wouldn't it be cool if you got something that was more well-rounded to represent your whole self? Because you have these side gigs, but no place to actually activate them. And some of them are actually where you want to grow right now in business and in your self-development, your professional career. She's like, people really light up on like LinkedIn Plus is like Ikigai Plus. It's like, oh yeah, that's missing. Oh, cool. And it's for the small fry, peer-to-peer local. Oh yeah, no, that's more me. I want to do it within biking or walking distance if I can. Bing or one neighborhood adjacent at most is the priority. Or if it's really important to me, I'll go across town, but don't make me fly to New York, right? That helps. So the where piece that we talked about um, is interesting. And what I'm seeing also through Deborah's work is if you're a social scientist and you really
Mhm.
got that Robert Keegan's thing, Ikigai slash, an evolved form of Maslow's self-expression stack, and then gameplay as the way to reveal it in a compact way. That because we're like, if you talk about education, it's all through play now. That's like the best version where you adapt the play to the kids' learning style and what they're passionate about and how they collaborate, how they learn and that changes. So you want to track it through games. Her whole thing is like warm you up through this kind of an engagement, a get to know game, which the device can record, identify separate voices, right? And then
Mhm.
it's like, okay, let's take a pause, look at what it's reflecting to you now. Do a little bit of to and fro with the Ikigai. Okay, back to playing games next. We're going from murder mystery to you want to play backgammon, do whatever, and talk about stuff while you're playing the game. Describe how you're playing, right? Even be able to observe it with video. You've got the social science lab that no one can even touch in terms of being able to like, and if you have a real trust engine that people say, it's my data, my LLM, my analysis, my ability to refine it, let's go. I'm gonna freaking like, hold on, I need to go and take a private moment while we're playing backgammon because I just had something come up that's personal. And you go and share it to your thing because it's your personal thing. That data no one's going to get access to without a thoroughly deep trust engine and really being acknowledged in a place that says, we want you to play and connect and get yourself, be seen, heard, understood, appreciated. And you got to begin with yourself to see, hear, and appreciate yourself before you can really do curiosity appropriately with others. Let's get curious about ourselves, right? Is an
Yeah.
interesting first framing.
Absolutely. And the way that it all gets logged and saved and stored, I mean, as I was saying, like this is just one aspect. This is a very small aspect. This is just the onboarding of logic there. And then it calls, these different tools. So if we want to update the Ikigai framework, the AI makes a decision. It's instructed to say, okay, if you notice these things, if you notice that the participant reveals something meaningful about one of the quadrants, right, then you make the decision. The AI makes a decision about what quadrant, what's the depth number, what's the note. If we want to increase the depth by one, it's a normal insight, or two, we found a breakthrough here. And then it's the same thing for logging an insight, or not the same, but it's similar, right? Breakthrough, contradiction, shifting energy, sentence describing what you notice. And so we're building as it goes on this profile that expands upon itself over time. And I can't stress this enough because it's very easy to build, an
Static
AI
model.
bot, yeah, a model where you have just one prompt that says, talk to me like this, right? And then, I can talk with it, and it can talk with me very well. It can have a very engaging conversation, but it doesn't actually have any real long-term value. Might make me in the moment feel better, might make me in the moment understand my own thoughts a little bit better, but the long-term value of it is non-existent. And what we're really trying to do is bridge that gap where we're able to create a long-term value from it.
And then this itself will evolve. We are a social science lab in a way to help find out how to create a better assistant
Mhm.
data capturing thing, learn
Mhm.
from the Deborah Pardes's in community and have them learn from this. It's a feedback system for human facilitators of community and personal development,
Mhm.
community leaders effectively, right? Our WhatsApp and Telegram leaders. There's a bigger game. If you're really excited when you see people grow and engage and play, and become themselves. Like Deborah, that's her heart song. Like it is for
Mhm.
many of my friends and myself in communities when I see people come together and I enter my house last night after being with Callie and getting my tires replaced. I couldn't be here for my weekly song circle, but I came home and they were a half an hour after the song class had ended, all lit up. It was like a Christmas present. I didn't even have to do anything. I just set the stage, bring a good facilitator in. I'm a host, and I am lit to see the joy, the self-discovery, people finding their voice, literally, in this case, singing. But it's a metaphor for exactly what we're talking about. And there's some people who just want to host it. So I got, you'll see in the document that I shared this morning, there's hosts, there's facilitators, there's organizers, there's supporters, there's program bringers. There's
Mhm.
community leaders, there's the admins in community lists, there's the mods, there's these different there's the people who bring the food, right? If we
Mhm.
can create an economic reward system to recognize people for their positive contributions, this is an engine for a very different kind of political social organizing. Like the world that
Absolutely.
we know in our hearts is possible suddenly
Mhm.
unlocks right in your neighborhood right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, and I think an area where we're going to want to think about it's not as top of mind right now, but it's definitely something to keep on our minds is how we're going to want to do these segmentations as well. Because like right now, we just have one huge database. Well, it's not huge right now because it's just the team, but we have a database with every user and their profiles, and it's all on Supabase, and it all gets associated in here. But as it expands, we really want to try and keep this as decentralized as possible. And so there's a bunch of different ways in my mind of doing that, a lot of different cool ways of implementing it. But I really want to think with the team about, okay, what does it actually mean to the end user about like what does the idea of data sovereignty and agency really mean to them, and how it relates to their communities and the tools that they interact with, so we can build something that really makes them feel like they're put at the center of it.
Well, I
Um,
think, you have your own thing, which is
mhm.
your map of your whole personal story. That for sure, we know that the individual is the And this is where Varus is really cool because Varus, I tracked all the different decentralized blockchainy tech, and there's Quartal, which is fully decentralized. You'll never get really, they've got 2 years before they can evolve a repeat patronage verification system. And it just doesn't have a big user base yet. Holochain also made to be community based, but doesn't have a really good portable identity system that's really clear so that you can do um, zero knowledge, trustless, persistent, validated ID, that you're a repeat patron of someone. So you can be a valuable recommender to others. It's really important to have persistent ID that doesn't give anything up, but can inform the system about what is repeat patronage in a validated blockchain trustless way. Varus does this because their whole theory, like our theory, is the whole thing centers on the individual, is has primacy in the entire design. And why Nick Lyons, my friend who's been a huge enthusiast for the way that Michael Tatongi developed Varus and his white paper, the individual has primacy. And he came from a Kabbalistic perspective as well. He's got big downloads and he was like, no, I'm changing from private equity to this thing. And really, I think we're all centering on the idea that, oh, Verus ID, unique, personally recoverable, that's the centerpiece and the hardest thing for Ethereum, Holochain, all the other chains to get right, all the other digital ID people to get right. So hard to do it if you strap that on later when you realize that it should have primacy. If you start from there, the souls, as it were, are the center, right? So there's this thing that starts there, and then the souls of self-selected communities, place-based first, because most people live in place, and that's relatable, right? And then your cooperation locally is a place-based one where you see people in the store and you see people in your neighborhood. So the next is to congeal people around shared communities, place-based first, but then we'll go to communities that are non-local for shared purpose and affinity that are also non-local. That comes later because it's an abstraction, right? And that, I mean, I'm getting high level with you here, but that becomes where, what I'm also understanding from where I hit the limits this morning with GPT and composing my doc, it was like, why are you taking so long, GPT? It's just like we wrote it all up above already for me in the chat. Take what you wrote, stick it together, and put it into a single doc. And it's like, I can't. The Python limits for the doc size, the file size, even if it's a 10-page chapter, it can't hold 10 pages properly. It can't compose it. It loses itself at that level. And this is what I think you're alluding to here is we need to segment those blocks of profile so they can be as refined as they can be for meaningful but quick matching,
Absolutely.
meaningful but quick reflection,
Mhm.
and still be comprehensive by breaking it into the most meaningful segmented segments of life
Mhm.
and of things within that part of your life, work, love, friendship, so on, affinity, fun, neighborhood. These become different blocks of profile that you can bring them together,
Mhm.
but you've got to have them in a workable segment that can be quickly parsed and
Mhm.
used for matching and filtering.
Yeah, absolutely. And speed's going to be a very important part of this. I'm looking at a bunch of the different technologies, like for example, here with the identity side of it, to try and make things faster. Like every time a message gets sent, we could do a lookup on the central database, but we know that within an hour, like it's likely if one person's sending a message from their number, we can save all of the data about their user identity into a cache on Redis, and that literally makes it many times faster. And so we'll be able to hopefully, as we build out the profiling engine and as we build out the vectors, we can have um, a similar sort of in-memory cache that's super fast because I've got a bunch of different ideas in my mind about how to optimize for the speed.
I'm doing a
But
bio break, but I can hear you, so I'm going to go offline. If you don't
Yeah.
need to share anymore, just go full screen. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah. I don't really have as much to share anymore, but I'm just kind of getting in about the various different ways to optimize it for speed. But I need to be able to optimize for speed once we have more of a baseline getting down first. I can't really like it's important to build first, then optimize, because we don't want to be optimizing for something that isn't even built yet. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing here now since I think we've covered this area. Um, and then,
Thank you. My podcast is really going to be funny because it's like, who's the podcaster that goes to the bathroom in the middle of the podcast? That's me. Um, drinking a lot of water, and it's just the case that when you're working your brain like this, your whole system just processes. It's interesting. So back to this, 100%, we're dynamic. We're going to do a workable thing, work with Deborah to get feedback from people in the room. So we'll probably have a couple of phones, company phones for this to be able to track what's happening in each room. Individuals have their phone to play the game and say how that went for them. So our early people, deep trusted, how was the game for you? Do an intake kind of conversation afterwards to say, hey, okay, this is getting better. This is not. And work with facilitators, the Debras of the world
mm,
to be like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this could be better this way or that. Here's how the program design could happen. And then Jamie going meta on this, saying, oh, I'm seeing what kind of people we need. I can take a Deborah that's not quite a Deborah and get her to do her version or him to do his version of that with the community so that we're both like have our own qualitative human feedback of master facilitators, master hosts to train the system to be a master facilitator assistant. So we're training the ambassadors as much as we're training individuals, and the individuals are training the system as much as the facilitators are training the system. It's like
mhm,
it's this responsive system, and then there's this question, how do we create an architecture that can abstract this to be simple, quick, and as relevant, not perfect, but pretty fucking good so that it's not dragging a whole bunch of data around and doing it slowly or with expensive compute, right? So that's where we're going to wind up talking to my friend Greg Stock, who created the Book of Questions years ago and works in social science for really the science of questions. He's a master. And so
mm.
he's worked with Esther Dyson, I was on his board. And so we've had a good to and fro a couple of years ago, but I'm going to be like, Greg, shout out to you. I would love for you to join this. And then Martin Schmidt, my neighbor and men's group guy, I think we're ready soon when we're working this to like bring him into the conversation because he's thought through the architecture of this stuff for like 15 years. He's been at the cutting edge. Could just really advise on that, as could Companion Intelligence's team, Michael, Lex, and maybe others there. And then Varus for how we weave in their system and the chain so that it all works very secure, really quick, because their thing is financial grade to be quick and verifiable. All that becomes part of the like the weaving when we're going to like the big project, right? That I talked a little bit about getting with Daniel Gorlick, who's our accountant finance CFO, startup CFO. He's worked in tech for years. He's the one who brought in the bookkeeper years ago that I've been working with to track my spend on all this stuff and going like, what a hole. But I just shared with him what we're up to, and he's like, I'm in for equity. The
Cool.
accountant is in for equity. I'm just gonna say
That's
he
amazing.
knows tech. He's in the Bay Area. He's got enough not to need to worry, but like I was just like, okay, I think we might be there. Because he was like, you're charismatic, you're explaining it well. I'm flattering myself a little bit, but he's like, I think he could smell like at a deep level with a quant head. Oh, I can see where this is going. I'd rather take points on a multiplier than take cash because I know I can see this is a good bet, which is very when you have your um, master steeplechase odds maker who
Hmm.
does the calcs, go like, I'm betting on this one. That's a good sign.
It's a great sign. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, Yeah, as far as any additional things with the Locamore tech stuff, um, I don't have anything. I think we did a very, very good sort of coverage of
Yeah.
it so far. It's going to be interesting to see how companion intelligence, develops as well, because it's an area that's definitely becoming very apparently like increasingly apparently important. I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on in the kind of consumer PC building space, but Micron, one of the big three, like it's an oligopoly of three companies that manufacture all the memory for all computers. And Micron is one of the big companies, and they just announced saying that they are cutting off all consumer sales, not selling to consumers anymore, only to big corporations. And it's caused the prices to go up, and people are pissed. And
Will be a cooperative chip builder this
mhm,
year. We could launch that. We could literally just put the page up and say co-op chip building fab in America or wherever we choose. And
yeah.
boom, right? That would be, and this is like, it's just a video, right? It's like, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but like they had this one and it's pretty funny and we could mirror it with a pretty good Sora video. And it's funny that this is public on Zoom, but no one will see it, so it doesn't matter. But in hindsight, people will be like, that's the moment it happened. You just put together a video and a landing page. If you like this idea, invest. It was called Solar Road Bricks. And
Mhm,
the first video was like, oh, we're a couple that believes that we could build bricks that could gather solar energy from our roads. Stupid idea
mhm,
because they get covered in dirt and whatever. But then they said, a friend said, you're getting no traction for that. You already spent like tens of thousands of dollars on this thing, maybe $100,000 on the product demo and stuff. Let me make you a video. And it's just fucking like, if you look up solar road bricks,
mhm.
jackass freaking like crowdfunding video. They sold 1.5 million on this jackass video. Solar freaking road bricks. Dit, 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 right? And you just do this thing. It's like pissed at the man. And you put
Yeah.
it out on TikTok, put it out on Twitch,
Yeah.
landing page, transparent governance structure. We're going to run it like a really sensible DAO. We're going to decide together. We're going to create a wisdom council of people who have the chops to actually run and implement this thing, who have the bona fides for being really diligent about open source and the kind of framework and what we'll need in a versatile chipset of what's already there. We need a new builder. We need a new thing who wants to put in the basic capital, and then we'll get some freaking super funder who will be like, oh yeah, PRI 1.5% interest loan, make that shit happen. Fuck the man. That's like
And
inches away.
it's fascinating and frustrating because like with companion intelligence and where they fit into the whole picture is like the way that a lot of people are seeing it now with Micron is like they're locking out consumers, individuals from the market so that if you want to own your own compute, if you want to own your data, you have to rent it.
And that's
You
where
don't.
no one's ever financed a fab, but the fab at this stage, it doesn't need to be hyper compact. It doesn't need to be, I mean, for the level of a certain kind of compute and speed, yes, an AMD chip, a lot of it's proprietary, but a lot of it's open source, right? A lot of it actually is open source.
Well, I mean, memory, people thought in theory was very, it's like a commodity. But big one of the biggest countries when it comes to semiconductor manufacturing is right here in Israel.
Yeah, well, there's that, Israel, and the other one that's really interesting is Taiwan, because Taiwan is getting nudged out by the US for security reasons. They sense that it's all going to port over here. So if we go to Taiwan and say, why don't you become our, it's fragile for this movement, but why don't you become our designer, own the IP, and off-source it and be a significant owner of it in a safe jurisdiction and still
Yeah.
be, you know, out of the US?
Mhm.
Taiwanese in partnership with an open source fab, and we get your IP over
Yeah.
here as a hedge for you guys with this,
Mhm.
nation in, new nation kind of version, whatever Balaji's idea is, Saravan's idea of like the nationless state, but the
Mhm.
nationless corporation, cooperation. So it's a funny one because I think we could
Yeah,
work this up and post it, and in the networks that say who would be on the wish list advisory because they'll be the same advisory for Locamore, curiously, and leap on the opportunity while the energy's hot.
potentially. Yeah. The other aspect as well that before we got sidetracked as well was with Locamore. One of the last things I'll leave you with is try out using the voice notes to talk to it. Let me know what you think. It's
And
working.
literally just
The
hit
same way you send me a
voice
voice
note.
message in WhatsApp or in Telegram, try that out.
So, again, we're going to need to talk about your points, allocating what you're bringing with, and I have a note on this, just like a bookmark for our conversation. It could go where I'm like we're recognizing you with an allocation of points in Locamore for bringing in Alpha Grove, or you're just like, you know what? I want to keep the IP for Alpha Grove. And I'm
Mhm.
running this as a parallel project that can take amenable corporate institutions on the
Mhm.
same journey and just build out their own proprietary chain infrastructure intelligence for their community
Mhm.
that's an Alpha Grove interactive thing. They don't need to be part of Locamore. Locamore's focus is local, the artisanal, and whatever, and I'm good with that. But the corporate's wide open, as
Mhm.
are credit unions and their community networks, which each institution of the credit union field could use Alpha Grove to
Mhm.
enable their community of financial-minded customers and businesses that are in credit union frameworks. So they're a huge user base. It's about a third of, or more, or half of consumer banking in America that's philosophically aligned. They have their own tech innovation funds. And if they saw Alpha Grove doing this, Locamore becomes a valuable in-network partner for each credit union to say, oh, we want to be your financial partner and do your transaction KYC and stuff. And we want Alpha Growth for our how our bank works better
Mhm.
and
Absolutely.
use Alpha Growth to develop our responsiveness to our community as a community-owned financial institution.
Mhm.
So that's an example where Alpha, you can just be like, okay, got it. I'm going to get some points in Locamore, and I'm using what I'm learning for Locamore as my job right now, but I'm developing on a paid basis my own project and IP that's shared
Mhm.
with Locamore.
Mhm.
We'll talk about that in the future. We don't need to get in the weeds, but right now, just tacitly on a friendship basis, shared with Locamore to develop it. And then maybe there's a swap in equity, you know?
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
you're owning Alpha Grove with the ambition of, okay, I'm showcasing it here.
Mhm.
And when we introduce this to the credit union innovation tech side, because that's what they
Mhm.
invest in is financial tech, and they've got
Yeah.
funds for this,
Yeah.
they're like, whoa, Alpha Grove, can we hire you?
Yeah, it's definitely something I got to look into more as well because the HMRC now it's like dealing with UK corporations is a huge pain in the ass. But so I gotta deal with a lot more paperwork of that first. But I do love the idea as well,
Yeah.
whether that's the existing UK corporation or a US LLC or
Yeah, do it
something.
with a simpler one. I think I'm going to walk through the steps of doing this whole thing. I still haven't yet because I wanted to get some validation with Daniel, but I'm clear on I'm going to work on the legal structure and the banking and the local
Mhm.
bank, and all of it is coming up. So I'll let you know what I find. Yuck. I hate doing admin. Um, anyway, and we could even talk about how this automates admin for local entrepreneurs and the data for the PRI piece. It's all embedded in here. Um,
Mhm.
anyway, it's so many layers to what we're going to be discovering together, the political, the social, the economic, the technology, the AI, this intersection at the cutting edge right now. I was listening to this guy who's a thought leader from the Santa Fe Institute named uh, uh-oh. Senior brain fart. I think it's just actually overloaded brain fart. Anyway, it's this thought leader at the Santa Fe Institute. I'm going to share a podcast interview with him because he's literally like, no, it's not bad tech. It's not good tech. It's just where we're going in a paradigm shift, and we just need to be more open to it. And we're like creating tooling for him to be like, oh shit, they're building to
100%.
evolve where he's at in the cutting edge of thinking, we're at the cutting edge in doing.
Yeah. That's the thing that I always try and explain to people as well, like what you were saying with my friends, like long before in the conversation, that I didn't get to with my friends in London, my friends, particularly they're actually in London because most of them are artists, a lot of them are musicians. And it's an area where a lot of them are like, they don't understand it, they're scared of it, the technology being the it. And as a result, naturally, the reaction is to like provide friction to push against it. And I try looking at them like, look, first of all, like your fears, it makes sense. Like you're not crazy, but at the same time, like let's try reframing this of like, okay, this is what's happening. This is where it's moving forward. How do we move forward with it in the most positive sense instead of just throwing in the towel?
Yeah. Where you're going to wind up being influenced in the background, because if not you using the apps that you depend on, unless you
Mm,
go full, even when you go, this guy who wrote this book, Against the Machine, is a
mm,
Luddite living on a farm.
mm,
Dude, you're still interacting with people who interact with the machine in your neighborhood. If you don't engage and you don't take agency, and this is Torah 101, if you allow your neighbor community person to sin without
mm,
rebuking,
mm,
it's on you in the time to come when Hashem says, your scorecard, sorry, you didn't
mm,
take responsibility in your community, which now includes the data system, whether you like it or not.
mm,
That layer is operating in and through us in a commercial, financial, weird, driven, beastly, zero-sum thing. If you don't engage, and you don't have to all day, it's actually irresponsible. And we're going to make it easy. That's our whole point is make it easy to engage responsibly where the nodes are very sensible. You are you, and you're responsible for you. If you're part of a community, be part of that community. Not all of them, the ones you care about most, at least be interested in the custodianship of one or a few communities of shared place and or purpose, affinity, or interest. It could just be your musical community. I don't care. It's a good place to practice. Once you get the muscles, you'll be like, oh, I understand how I can plug in politically now. I just need
mm,
to hear around the issues that I care about, get a little bit informed, share with my friends. We are now empowered. It's really not complicated. It's going to take, it's not voting on every issue and reading thoroughly about everything. It's about having a community intelligence system that requires the least of our time, the most
mm.
focused attention on what our ikigai says is our thing, personally and communally, and we solve everything with that.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. Beautifully said. Cool.
Yeah, so good. Such a pleasure working with you. I couldn't even believe like it's so many layers
Yeah.
of alignment and understanding and being at the cutting edge and just like working through the mire of it to see a little bit of daylight together. And it's like I can see where we're going. I'm like at that point where it's like I just need to be like, Lillian, make it easy for me to how I flow I need to get to proof of concept. Come on. And that's the project next is to get mom's endorsement to support this because I think she'll be an investor supporter, or at least let me get some loans from her to be able to do this. It's so funny that I have to go to mama, but I've tapped my resources to
Yeah,
the max to get this. You wouldn't even
absolutely.
believe the freaking hoops I've had to jump through with like mortgage at the limit, supporting
For
my ex
sure.
and things, and just being like, oh, I
Uh,
can't stop. I can't stop.
well, if you need any help from me in terms of putting together like a really kick-ass individualized demo or anything, like any sort of materials tech-wise, let
We're
me
going to do a
know.
walkthrough. So one of the things we're going to do with the team, I've got it written down, is we're going to have a team product test and
Hmm.
Ikigai experience for our own thing. Each
Hmm.
of us describing what our own project, dream project stuff is. So we're just really modeling it. And then that'll be probably one of our best ways to get to know each other. These videos to start with, everyone paid for watching the video because it's that important that we learn about each other. So when we
Hmm.
come together, the get to know doesn't require like the big long everyone doing like 5 minutes, which again is super superficial, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the depth to which you thought about, Alpha Growth till today. I
Hmm.
don't know the depth to which it's multidimensional and you're a multidimensional human till today. And so now the team has the chance to witness this. And curiously, it's the
Hmm.
YouTube version of
Hmm.
what the app will help to do and then quantify.
And the great thing about this too is, like when I'm going around and I'm meeting new people and you have like the preloaded script in your head and someone says, "Oh, like where are you from? What do you do?" Right? And it's like, oh, I have to give the same thing over and over again. It's like now it's already here for you.
You want to try it? That's
Yeah.
actually what Ben Canyon said. Your best way to enroll investors in anyone is like, I'm just, I really believe in this thing. Why don't we just turn it on and see what it does for you? I can erase it if it doesn't work. We'll start anonymously. Let's put a fake name in there. Oh, you want to claim that what we did? Let's register you. And you're in, right?
Yeah,
Wild.
exactly.
All right. I'm going to stop record. Boom, which automatically, yes, stop recording. And then stop good old YouTube. I think it stopped.